As I stepped into the local bank, its cool, familiar ambience gave no indication that this day would be any different from the countless times I'd been here. I pulled a numbered ticket, adjusting the purse strap on my shoulder, thinking about the cup of tea I'd treat myself to afterwards. Suddenly, three masked individuals burst through the door, brandishing firearms and yelling commands. Panic exploded around me as screams filled the air, people falling to the ground to shield themselves. One robber approached the counter demanding cash, while the other two kept a watchful eye over us. My heart raced uncontrollably. I tried to keep still and invisible. The mother and child near me, the businessman, the teenager, we were all leveled by this palpable, choking fear. In the midst of it, the youngest-looking robber, jittery and clearly inexperienced, mistakenly fired his gun, embedding the bullet into the ceiling. The echo amplified our terror. From the corner of my eye, I saw one teller secretly trigger the alarm, but her slight movement was caught by the second robber. He didn't say a word, but the threat in his eyes was evident. She froze. When the robbers realized the police were outside due to the silent alarm, their panic mirrored ours. They became more erratic, shouting conflicting commands. The leader of the trio decided they needed a human shield to exit, and for reasons I'll never know, I was the unlucky choice. Cold steel pressed against my neck, the acrid smell of the gunman's sweat mixed with the undeniable scent of fear. As he dragged me toward the exit, I thought of my years in the classroom, the faces of countless students. This couldn't be my end. Outside, the glaring sun blinded me momentarily. The leader's grip on my arm tightened, and my legs nearly gave way from sheer terror. The police surrounded the bank, their megaphones urging the robbers to surrender. Every inch we moved felt like miles, every second an eternity. The robbers' hurried breathing echoed my own. I wasn't brave, wasn't planning to be a hero. I was just an old school teacher, and all I could think about was surviving. Then, out of nowhere, a car horn blared. It startled the gunman, causing him to momentarily loosen his grip. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I simply fell to the ground instinctively. In the split seconds that followed, the police acted. The robbers, distracted and outnumbered, were quickly apprehended. Later, people said I was clever to drop when I did. But in truth, it wasn't bravery or intelligence. It was raw, paralyzing fear. The trauma of that day never truly left me. The bank's familiar walls became a place of nightmares, the sun's rays a reminder of blinding terror. But amidst the fear, there was a new appreciation for the fragility of life and the unpredictability of each day. The world is a remarkably simple place when you're 5. Friends are made effortlessly, and loyalty isn't dependent on anything beyond the mutual love of some toy or TV show. So when my daughter Sarah first mentioned her new friend Tommy, I didn't think much of it. Imaginary friends are standard fare at her age, and it was healthy for her imagination. The first time I noticed something unusual was on a chilly Sunday evening. As I walked past Sarah's room, I heard her giggling. The sound of a child's laugh can be the most comforting thing, but this felt different, more secretive. I softly peeked into her room. She was sitting in a circle of toys, whispering. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" I inquired. She looked up, her eyes wide and innocent. "Tommy." I smiled. "What were you two whispering about?" Sarah glanced to her side, as if waiting for Tommy's permission to tell. "He just tells me stories, Daddy, about the outside world. He says he has been everywhere." I chuckled. "Sounds like a very adventurous friend." Things took a strange turn a few days later when I found her in the backyard, talking animatedly to a bush. When I asked her what she was doing, she claimed Tommy lived there. I just put it down to her vibrant imagination. It wasn't until she started revealing things she couldn't possibly know that the unease began. Sarah started sharing detailed accounts of places she'd never been. She mentioned a small toy shop in a town we'd never visited, a park with a blue and yellow swing set in another state, and an ice cream parlor where Tommy met another friend. Curious and admittedly a little concerned, I started looking up these places. To my shock, they all existed, exactly as Sarah described. As days passed, I began hearing hushed conversations late at night, long after Sarah should have been asleep. She talked about more places, more experiences, and about some man, a man Tommy was afraid of. One night, as I was getting water from the kitchen, I heard Sarah's voice from the living room. It was past her bedtime. I tiptoed to see who she was talking to. From my vantage, I saw her in dim light, holding hands with a tall, gaunt figure. The sight made my blood turn cold. Who was this? Gathering courage, I yelled, "Who are you?" The figure bolted out the back door. Sarah, startled, began crying. I ran to her, holding her tight, and called the police. The following investigation unraveled a series of horrifying truths. The man had been a drifter, traveling from town to town, using an intricate network of small underground spaces linked to our house. He befriended children, get close, learn their schedules, their lives. He had done it multiple times in different states, and now he was in our home, whispering stories of his travels through a vent in Sarah's room. The backyard bush? It concealed an entrance to this hideout. As for Tommy, the police found a set of old children's clothes in his underground lair, along with a diary detailing his travels. The last entry spoke of befriending a little boy named Tommy, who went missing in another state. The man was captured a week later, trying to enter another home in a neighboring state. Our family moved out of that house, trying to leave behind the shadows of that horrifying encounter. Sarah went to therapy, and over time, the whispers of Tommy faded. One evening in our new home, as we sat down for dinner, she looked at me and said, "Daddy, Tommy says thank you. He says he can rest now." I hugged her tight. The rhythmic hum of tires on the highway and the mellow croon of a late-night radio show was the only solace I found as I drove back from a friend's party. The evening was late, and a light fog danced over the road, adding an eeriness to the already dim night. The party had been a last-minute decision, and in retrospect, maybe not the best one. I was exhausted, the events of the night playing like a repetitive montage in my mind. Highway 56 was notorious for being desolate, especially this late. However, a blinding flash of red and blue lights broke my reverie. My heart started racing as the police siren wailed behind me. Cursing under my breath, I wondered if I had maybe been driving too fast without realizing. I pulled over, fingers trembling slightly. Though I hadn't had a drink at the party, the sudden appearance of a cop had my nerves spiking. Peering in the rearview mirror, I watched as a tall figure stepped out of the police cruiser, the fog swirling around his boots. There was something immediately off about him. The uniform was not like the ones I'd seen on other officers. It seemed slightly baggy, and his badge, even from this distance, looked tarnished. My paranoia began to grow when I noticed that his police cruiser lacked the typical markings. As he approached my window, the dim light illuminated a rough-looking face, hidden partly behind an unkempt beard. "Evening, ma'am," he grunted, his voice gravelly. "License and registration, please." While I complied, I couldn't help but notice his eyes, cold, devoid of the typical professional warmth you'd expect. There was something predatory about them. The radio on his shoulder didn't emit any typical police chatter. "Why did you pull me over, officer?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. He took his time, examining my papers. "You seem to swerve a little back there. Have you been drinking tonight?" I shook my head quickly. "No, sir, just tired." He peered into the back of the car, his gaze lingering longer than I was comfortable with. "All alone tonight?" The very question sent shivers down my spine. "My boyfriend's expecting me," I lied, hoping to deter any ideas he might have. He leaned in closer, the faint smell of stale cigarettes assaulting my nostrils. "You should be careful, driving this late. It's not safe for a young woman like you." Despite my rising fear, my instincts kicked in. "Thank you, officer. I'll be sure to remember that. Can I go now?" He took a long pause, then finally handed back my papers. "Drive safe," he murmured, but there was no concern in his voice, just an underlying threat. The instant he walked away, I sped off, not caring about any speed limits. My heart raced, and the fog seemed thicker, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. About 10 minutes later, another blinding flash of lights filled my mirrors, the same red and blue. Panic flooded me. I dialed 911 on my phone, keeping it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? I think I'm being followed by a fake cop on Highway 56. He pulled me over once, and now he's behind me again. My voice was on the edge of hysteria. The operator's voice was calm. Stay on the line. We're tracking your location. We don't have any units dispatched in that area. The words felt like a punch in the gut. The siren wailed louder, and the cruiser edged closer. Take the next turn off, the operator said. It should be a rest area in about 2 miles. We'll have officers waiting for you there. Every second felt like an hour. I pushed my car faster, praying the rest area would appear. Just as despair threatened to engulf me, I saw the sign. As I turned off, I saw 2 police cruisers waiting. The fake cop's car screeched to a halt behind me, but he didn't get out. After what felt like an eternity, the 2 real officers approached my car. You're safe now, one of them said, his face filled with genuine concern. It took months to shake off the paranoia, but the one thing that haunted me the most was the realization that if I hadn't trusted my instincts and called for help, I might not have made it home that night.